Saturday's Grade 1 Pacific Classic at Del Mar is a win, and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic, which will also be held at Del Mar. The last 8 winners have been locally based, and you could throw a blanket over Express Train, Royal Ship, Tripoli, Tis a Magician. Some interesting invaders in this race as well. Joe Kristufek, Scott Shapiro, and Scott. There's been some pretty impressive winners of this race over the years.
Yeah, always one of my favorite days back when I lived in Southern California. Always some top-notch horses running here. Recent winners include Maximum Security, Accelerate, California Chrome, Beholder, Shared Belief, Game on Duda, who's who of horses, and a lot of them went on to do bigger and better things after the Pacific Classic. Really looking forward to this one, Joe.
Yeah, I mentioned throwing a blanket over those California horses, Scott Express Train, Tripoli, Royal Ship. These are horses that are familiar with one another. Of the California-based horses, which one do you fancy the most?
I think Express Train, because of his affinity for Del Mar, is probably the likeliest winner of those. Royal Ship, I'm not sure if he's a 1.25 mile horse, maybe a little short last time out off the layoff, but I thought had every chance to beat Express Train, who just kept going. A very impressive and gritty effort, using the word grit like our friends at Optics EQ like to do as a keyword. That was grit. Express Train looked like he might be passed a number of times, but was not to be denied. Whether he can do that at 1.25 miles against this field remains to be seen, but I do prefer him over the locally based horses.
Yeah, Tripoli, a horse that had been running on turf his entire career. You see the pedigree by Kitten's Joy. You think that he would be a turf horse, but he's run very well on dirt in his last couple of races, albeit at 1 mile and a 16th, but he's right there with those. And then Tis a Magician, Scott, a horse that's been running in marathons in a lot of his most recent races. Second best two back in the Brooklyn behind Lone Rock, who is by far the best horse in that division, and a winner last time out going 1.5 miles at Del Mar. Do you think he can be a part of the mix at the end of this race?
I think he's up against it a bit. It is encouraging that he does retain Flavien Prat and should be involved early, but I'm not sure the pace will be all that slow in here. There are a number of horses that look like they want to be involved early, at least to some extent, and they probably are a little bit up against it compared to the top contenders. So we might see 1 or 2 of these jockeys get aggressive. Tripoli with Tiago Pereira along the rail, stretching out, has been great since the move over the main track, might try to get aggressive. I think Independence Hall will definitely be a part of the early proceedings. Florent Giroux aboard, the blinkers go on, the 1.25 miles will question. I'd be very surprised if he isn't sent. And even Magic on Tap is a horse that I have my questions about his quality and distance, but I could see him being aggressive for trainer Bob Baffert, who's won this race 2 of the last 4 years.
Now, I mentioned earlier that the last 8 winners of this race were locally based. The last invader to win it was Dullahan, and he took the Monmouth Park to Del Mar route. And that's exactly what Dr. Post is doing for Todd Pletcher, who does not run a lot of horses in Southern California, Scott. Blinkers went on last time out, and he really seemed to take his game to a new level over 9 furlong.
Yeah, getting back to that 2-turn distance, I think, was key. Now, one thing to make note of, he did have Lasix at Monmouth. He won't have Lasix here, but the blinkers will remain on, and he was impressive and finished very well that day with a favorable race shape, but he should get a pretty favorable one here. Obvious question is, how will he handle the Ship out west? You mentioned Pletcher. Not a lot of horses going out to Southern California often, not a lot of success with limited sample at Del Mar, but I think this is a horse on the improve, doing what he wants to do, going the 2 turns. 1.25 miles, maybe a question, but the way he finished last time at Monmouth makes him my top selection, Joe.
Yeah, as he ran as a 3-year-old, he competed against some of the best in the division. Tis the Law, Authentic, Mystic Guide, held his own with those horses. Todd Pletcher horses often get better in their 4-year-old season, and I think this horse qualifies for that. Not going to hold anything against him from the Met Mile, which was a strangely run race. And the last time he ran, the only other time he ran without Lasix besides the Met Mile was the Westchester, and he was just fine in that race. That Lasix equation is always a little bit of a wild card. But Scott, to me, Dr. Post in his last race at Monmouth ran like a horse that'll run all day long. So I'm not bothered at all by the 1.25 mile distance.
Yeah, when I originally looked at this horse back in his 3-year-old campaign, I had some questions about the bottom side pedigree going 2 turns or going 1.125 miles to 1.25 miles, but he's alleviated those concerns. Joel Rosario could finish with the best of them, maybe the best, and he knows how to win races at Del Mar. He's actually won this race twice with Dullahan, who you mentioned, and then with Accelerate in 2018. I think think he gets the best of this group in the lane, probably running down Express Train in the final strides.
Horse that's tough to gauge here, Scott, is Independence Hall from Michael McCarthy. Got the utmost respect for him. He puts the blinkers on in the Pegasus World Cup. He was a pretty good third at Gulfstream behind Nixco earlier this year. Last couple of races leaving a little bit to be desired, but he's a horse in this race. We don't know how much upside he might have, if any, at this point of his career.
Yeah, he did run well in the Pegasus World Cup Invitational at a 1.125 but the Gulfstream 1.125 plays a little easier than some of these other tracks, 1.125 let alone a 1.25 I really tried to make a strong case for this horse because I think they're going to get aggressive out of the gate, legging up Florent Giroux, adding the blinkers. I just don't know if he's a 1.25 type. Not sure if he's good enough, but more so I'm concerned about the distance.
All right. So Scott and I are both going to go to the post with Todd Pletcher, Joel Rosario, and the doctor. It's Dr. Post for us in the Pacific Classic coming up on Saturday at Del Mar. Win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Good luck.